Thank you so much, folks, and thank you for that incredible introduction. As we adjust mics so that hopefully I'm not yelling at you, because really I don't want to yell at you. Hopefully we are able to have a really incredible conversation. That's really the point of tonight, and conversations like this and events like this is to spark, no pun intended, conversation. So without further ado, let me begin this evening by reflecting on what an absolute honor. We're gonna have Mike fun tonight, I can already tell. And thank you and welcome to the latecomers. Find your seats, welcome. I feel like a teacher in class, as the stragglers, they were out in the hall, they were doing their thing. Oh, look, more. It's fun. It's all right. So, as was mentioned, my name is Anna Murphy, she, her, and I have the immense honor and privilege of serving this incredible city of trailblazers, of bold visionary leaders in the capacity of Vice Chair for the Gender Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Subcommittee of the City of Calgary. We are Jedis, as we like to call ourselves, even though we don't get to do all the cool Star Wars stuff, but we are Jedis. I also have the incredible honor and privilege of serving on the Calgary Stampede Community Connections, which is all about building community and looking towards what this organization that has immense privilege and power within the city of community, and what does that look like on a broader Calgary perspective, and really telling the story and bringing folks together. So without further ado, great communities do not just manifest themselves. They require us to roll up our sleeves and actively engage. I've already scared people away and I haven't even really gotten started. This is great. This is fantastic. We're off to a great start, folks. We've had latecomers. We've had people running out. Off to a great start. Great communities require us to actively roll up our sleeves and engage in the ongoing transformative work required to bring our bold vision to life. If you look around this room, each and every one of you are visionary change makers, fueled by passion, fueled by resilience, fueled by a commitment to your community, whatever that looks like. Recognizing that community building in all of its facets is challenging, is complex, but requires all to be at the table if we are to authentically bring diversity and inclusion tangibly to life, going beyond the performative, going beyond the tokenization that oftentimes so many folks, such as myself, a transgender woman, such as those who are among our BIPOC communities, and so many more face as folks put emphasis in diversity, but fail to recognize how we also have to implement inclusion in order to get to equity. Over a decade ago, when I had the courage, and yes, it is courageous to come out and affirm who you are to your community, however that looks. For me, it was coming out in stages, as I like to call. First, coming out as bisexual, because I thought that, that's going to be an easier pill to swallow for my father, who is a semi-professional team roper, owned an oil and gas company, and let's be clear, we lived in very rural Alberta, so bisexual, that'll be an easier pill to swallow. Then I came out as gay on my 16th birthday, thinking often of the song, "It's my birthday, I can cry if I want to," and I did. Then, at the tender age of 18, I came out as transgender because all the other labels didn't fit. There was something missing. It wasn't quite the right identity. And so over a decade ago, when I had that courage to begin my transition, taking my first steps down what was and continues to be a very long road towards affirming who my heart and soul always knew, was met with a reality that most likely would see me Like so many, I am scaring so many people away. This must be like the whole handful. I'm like, Jesus, I tried to write. We're getting to the inspiring stuff. I promise we're just got to go through the hard stuff first. Okay, that's fair. All right, yeah, okay. Anyone else need to use the bathroom? Should we intermission? Pause. But back to the reality that would most likely see me, like myself, recognizing that my skin color is white, like so many others that would ultimately see me unhoused, unloved, unemployed, underemployed, attacked, assaulted, or perhaps murdered. And the reason why I brought up my skin color is because we know without question and uncategorically that those trans, two-spirit, non-binary, and gender-diverse individuals of color, especially Indigenous folks, face these barriers at a much, much higher rate. I fought for my very existence, continue to fight for my very existence. And ultimately, the reality would see me being recorded down in history as nothing more than a statistic, either due to self-harm or suicide. And I apologize, folks, for those who are in the room, I should have said trigger warning. So if there is a trigger warning, please come and see me afterwards, and we will ensure that we get you the resources to connect with a healthcare professional, someone who can actually talk through. But don't worry, like I said, we're getting to the positive stuff. I promise you. We have to go through the hard stuff first. I'm scaring the straight guys away again too. They've all left. You've noticed, right? You've noticed. We've cleared. They even cut my mic. This is great. We're off to a great start. Fantastic. I have no mic. Scared away all the straight cisgendered men right in front of me. This is not unusual for a trans woman, folks. This is very used to this. This is fantastic. I see technical support that's coming in to save me. Hello.
Look at the mic.
We're having fun. There we go. Look at that. Oh, God help us. This is only page 1. We have so many more. Back to the serious stuff. Again, when I rehearsed this, there wasn't as many comedic interludes. But again, I don't want you all running out of here bawling, because they'll be like, what in God's name did you just see? And they'll be like, huh? They'll never invite me back again. But again, back to ending up and recorded in history, recorded as a statistic. Thankfully, my better angels were by my side. The night that I found myself on the edge of High Level Bridge. And to be clear, it's not the edge that, is the nice, wonderful one where you get really great views of the city of Edmonton. I did get a great view of the city of Edmonton, but unfortunately, had I just loosened just a pinch, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But, like I said, my better angels, or whatever is out there in this universe, was looking out for me. So, to those who call Calgary and our great community home, folks who are transgender, folks who are two-spirit, non-binary, gender diverse in any way, pushing against the binary, pushing against the mold, especially those who are kiddos and youth, we see you. I see you. And we stand with you, and we commit, and this is something I don't take lightly, because I have the privilege to sit in community building spaces, whether it's with the City of Calgary, whether it's with Calgary Stampede, Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs, and I'm very happy to say that I was nominated for a position as senator with U of C. So these are influential organizations, so I don't take it lightly when I say that I see you and I stand with you. And commit to building safe, affirming communities for you, for all US LGBTQ plus folks. We will fight alongside and defend you, because your existence, much like mine, is not open for debate now or ever. You, quite frankly, are my reason why. and why I am so honored to play even the smallest role in community building within the city of Calgary and throughout the province of Alberta. But even more so, recognizing that I stand upon the shoulders of giants, of those who do meaningful, tangible, life-saving work each and every day. Leveraging what privilege I do have to move the needle, even in the smallest way, using even the smallest platform, even something like this, to have a conversation with you, to scare some people out of the room, but that's okay, they got a little bit of it. To hopefully get to a point where all can see their future being an achievable, tangible, affirmed reality, not just within the city of Calgary, not just within the province of Alberta, but truly across Canada, because I recognize that it's Pride Month, and by gosh, we have a lot of progress to celebrate. But we also can't forget about the work which remains. And it is critical that work done on equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility be approached with a goal of achieving tangible and meaningful results and change. Data released by Statistics Canada shows more than 100,000 Canadians identify as transgender or non-binary. In Alberta, more than 12,000 trans Canadians call our province home. Alberta, in fact, being above national average, with more than 5,000 remarkable trans folks calling our communities home. We must recognize that this is only a snapshot. Why is it only a snapshot? Well, quite frankly, because not everybody feels safe to self-report on something like the Canadian census data. And further to some folks not feeling safe to report on the Canadian census data, we also need to recognize that there are some of those who don't have access to completing the Canadian census. So if we think of those 40% 2S LGBTQ plus youth who are homeless across Canada. This data collected, not because I'm pulling it off the top of my head, but quite frankly, it is tangibly recorded by the United Nations Free and Equal Organization. So our work is not done, and you heard me mention this just before. Our work's not done, but we do need to celebrate. We need to celebrate those accomplishments. And we need to celebrate the milestone that Canada is the first and only country out of all of them to collect census data and information on transgender individuals. And it was interesting the day that the census data came out and just before, because media agencies and everybody was like, oh my gosh, we have census data. Folks, when was the last time before tonight that you heard anybody talk about census data? That laugh is, it's allowed. You're allowed to laugh. That was funny. Because nobody talks about census data. Unless you're a major nerd or you're a dork, or you're in the work that requires census data. You're not hitting up the Starbucks and the person beside you is going like, did you see that census data? That was some incredible census data that came out. No. So the census data that we have, whether it's as politicians or community organizations, whatever it is, and this is what I said to the news outlets that were like, rah, 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 we have census data, we're so great. I said, cool, great, representation matters. Like, yes, hashtag representation matters, we love it. But here's the thing, you know what I would love more than census data? I'd love to be able to go into a doctor and receive equitable health care and not be turned away because of who I am as an individual. I would like to go into a pharmacy and be able to pick up my medication without being dead named, misgendered, even perhaps denied medication. That, actually, to folks like me and those who are within the trans, two-spirit, gender-diverse community, that would actually do them better than being able to, go to the next G7 meeting and be like, guess what Canada did? We collected census data. So we need to recognize that, yes, census data, it's important and, rah, 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 but it will only have an impact if it emboldens and empowers those in positions of power and leadership, those with the ability, those who are bold and visionary in their leadership, which brings meaningful and tangible change. Because again, we can have all the conversations we want. I can't tell you how many panels I've sat on. I can't tell me how many talks I've sat on. And people still go, what can we do for the trans community? And I'm like, by God, don't you know how to use Google? But anyways, it's fine, because we will still have the conversation. But at the end of the day, we're going like, we've told you over and over and over. And at the end of the day, we literally feel like we're not just shouting at the rafters, we're shouting into the stars and hoping that somebody out there actually listens to us and just does the thing. So we need to ensure that we have tangible change brought forward by way of policy, legislation, however that looks, and so on. And we must not allow this information that we now have, and quite frankly, let's be very clear, the census is not the Hail Mary on, oh my God, Canada has trans people. We've had this data collected in various different ways before, whether it's through organizations like EGAL, Skipping Stone, Trans Equality, and so many others that, again, these are the folks that are doing the life-saving work each and every day. Occasionally somebody hands me a microphone, and occasionally some people listen, except for the straight men that we scare away. Words matter, but actions must always speak louder than our words. And I do recognize the irony in that as I'm literally speaking to you. But our actions really truly must speak louder than any words, any platitudes, because that's honestly how together we drive forward a bold future, rethinking and reimagining what our communities aspire to be, propelling Calgary, Alberta, and Canada on a path where all see their future being an achievable reality. And folks will be like, well, that sounds nice. What does that actually mean? Well, again, going from diversity, making sure you have that foundational piece. How are people being included? How are folks actually seeing themselves? Do they feel valued? Do they feel that they can grow, participate, and have that ability? That's how we get to equity. That's how we get to equality. And right now, in a lot of spaces, and it's okay, is we see the diversity. We see that reactionary. We see folks like, gotta get, X, Y, and Z at the table. But when we get them there, we don't actually have those foundational pieces in place for them to succeed, for them to grow, for them to actually be able to have a reality that sees them being able to do more than just survive, but thrive in the environment where they're at. We must recognize that young people are failing to see themselves reflected within this province. And it's not only with consideration to job opportunities. We recognize that many are struggling to see themselves reflected within traditional oil and gas culture. And before anyone starts throwing popcorn at me or whatever else you have, I see these little flying orbs. Recognize, I told you, my father's in oil and gas, so I do recognize it, folks. I'm just saying, folks are not seeing themselves in that, and that's okay. That's fine. That's okay. It's okay. You can start throwing your popcorn now. But if we look further at the census data, again, you guys are going to walk out of here talking about census data, and people are being like, where in God's name did this go? Census, what is that? So again, you may have to Google to figure out what the census is. It's fine. Even I didn't know what it was at first. But we see the younger generation of Canadians being 7 times more likely. Again, let's go back to the census. So younger Canadians across this great, place that, we call home, see themselves as 7 times more likely to identify within the trans community. So if we think about that, we have young folks 7 times more likely to identify within the trans community. And no, for anyone who's like, well, that's because it's a fad. It's not a fad, because I'm going to, and this is not because I take ownership of this narrative, but it's because I value the education so much that has been on these lands since time immemorial, which is that of being two-spirit. Indigenous cultures around this giant, huge place that we call Earth have identities known as Two-Spirit. So for anyone who thinks that being trans, or non-binary, or gender diverse is something of a fad, I would encourage you to engage with Google in a good way, because God knows there's some rabbit holes down there, but engage with it and learn what is it to be Two-Spirit, and start to look at the multitude of Two-Spirit identities, because then you will start to realize that this whole gender concept is nothing but a colonization, and something that us as colonizers, I say that respectfully, hello, I'm white, came and, God, we fucked things up, didn't we? So, if young Canadians are 7 times more likely to identify within the trans community, and I use that as an umbrella term to recognize transgender, Two-Spirit, non-binary, gender diverse, and anyone else who finds themselves identifying within that umbrella, how then can you attract, I'm sure you've seen it in the media, we need to attract more talent, we need to attract more young people to Calgary, to Alberta. Well, how do we do that then if we don't have things like healthcare policy where they can get access to quality, affirming healthcare? How do we do that if we have a government that does things like vote against GSAs? How do we do that when we have a government that will not do things like march in a pride parade or whatever it is? And again, this is not a partisan event. Don't worry. If anyone's getting a little, hot under the collar, it's okay. This is just, again, to spark conversation about this is what we're putting out to the world. And if anyone doesn't think that we have a role to play on the world stage, I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of this little place called Florida, right? Or perhaps some have seen what is happening in the southern United States. And for me, when I stand in a space like this, again, no pun intended, a space like this, I think of folks like Kai Shapley. Kai Shapley is an 11-year-old trans girl who is taking on legislatures and governments in the United States. And I was scrolling through, and it was just before Trans Day of Visibility. And she had posted a video on social media. Again, I'm scaring people away. It's great. And she was talking about how essentially what is happening in the southern United States and this anti-trans rhetoric that is happening is life-threatening. And she was talking about some much more serious subject matter, which again, I would encourage you to go and look at. So when I stand in this space, that's who I think about. And I think about how folks like me, but even again, going back to those people with tangible power, whether it's someone like Mayor Gondek, or someone like Leader of the Opposition, Rachel Notley, or community builders with community organizations. Those are the folks that we need to stand up and unequivocally say not only that they see and stand with us, but that they are going to implement a policy. And so, again, if you just had waited, I'm almost done, I swear I'm almost done. This is part of a much bigger conversation about our need within Alberta to embrace the transformation of our great province. From longing for days gone by, thinking of what once was, and moving forward towards reimagining what our communities, because let's be very clear, it's our communities. We all inhabit this, I'm going to use the pun again, space, together. Moving forward and looking at an opportunity of where can we go? Where can we go from here? And I'll leave you with this before I open it up for questions. I think I still have questions. I should have a little timer on my thing. But in some ways, Alberta is transgender. Knowing who it is within its heart and soul, but struggling a little bit, and in some ways a lot, with the image that's being reflected back upon itself, and struggling to truly come out and affirm itself to the world around it.